It's time for the Onyx News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the Onyx News Podcast, Margie K.
Hello and welcome to Onyx News. I'm your host, Margie K. And this evening we have a good show for you. Before we get started, I do want to remind you of a few new things that we've got. We've got a new book out. It's called All Monsters Are Human by Derek Smith. Derek, of course, is one of our regular writers for Onyx Magazine, and he has created a collection of horror stories for which are fiction. Okay. And we decided we're going to start doing fiction at Onyx Media just because of Derek, because he's such a good writer. You're going to enjoy it. It's on Amazon right now. Also, we've got a few coloring books that are available from Onyx Media, and this is the latest one, the paranormal coloring book. There are 4 available. So if you'd like to do adult coloring, those are up. And then, of course, one of my latest books, How to Research a Haunted House, along with my co-author, Violet Wisdom, who is my executive assistant. But we really did a good job on this book, I must say. And there is nothing else out there like it. It tells you how to do research on a house so that you can find out the history and find out possible reasons for why it might be haunted and who might be doing the haunting. Well, this evening, my guest is Ann Ziebell. She had an interest in cryptids from an early age. She's a member of the BFRO, and after having her own Class A Bigfoot sighting, she became an investigator and began leading Bigfoot expeditions. Ann is the director of the Ozark Mountain Bigfoot Conference, and we will be talking about that tonight as well. Welcome to the program, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much. I know you are a very busy lady. And so for Bigfoot expeditions, about how many do you do a year?
Well, it's ever changing. So in the year of 2025, we started out, we did a spring expedition in Missouri. We got permission and we did a BFRO expedition in Oklahoma. We are doing a BFRO expedition in September in Arkansas, and we are doing a BFRO expedition in Missouri in the very end of October. So I will be doing 4 with the BFRO this year, and then I have a private one that I do with my conference also. So I've got 5 on the books this year.
Well, that's plenty. And we were talking before the show a little bit about your spring expedition that you did this year. It sounds like you've had an interesting time, so please tell us about that.
Yes, we did. We went to the same area that we went last spring because we had activity. And so Wednesday night we set up, the expedition doesn't start till Thursday, but we're there on Wednesday, just like the very base crew. And we had been sitting around the fire, and we finally, turned in, I don't know, midnight, 1 o'clock, something like that. About 2:30 in the morning, there was this massive scream that came through. And one of the gentlemen, he wasn't in a tent. He basically was a cot that had a rope over the top of it and a tarp over it. And he came flying out of that. And it was his first time ever being out like that. Scared him to death, right? Mm. And he said he could see something up the road because normally we camp down by the river, and it was so flooded this year that we had to camp in the upper part of the campground. And so, yeah, there was something screaming from across the road. toward the campground at about 2:30 in the morning. So that's how our
Wow.
expedition started. So that was
Well, the scream, was it a deep, low scream or a high pitched?
it was a high pitch, like they talk about hearing the women screaming,
Yes.
and that's kind of what he described. Now, it was funny because we had a herd, I guess you would call them, of feral cats in the campground, and it's spring, and they were mating and making all kinds of noise too, right? And so, but this was definitely came over that, overpowered that. But the young man that jumped out of his cot, he was standing out there looking around, and he said he could see up there because there was a slight incline before you got to where you could come into the campground. He could see something standing up there and kind of weaving around. He never got a real good look at it, but he said he could see something that was upright up the hill a little ways from the campground. So that was before the expedition ever started. And Thursday night we went out, and we were out in an area, had some interesting things going on. There was something moving around us because we took about 15 of us out to this area, and we split into 3 groups. And one group, they went dark, as we called it, no electronics whatsoever. I mean, nothing. They just went into an open area and sat kind of, for lack of a better term, they made themselves a target. Then we had another group that was walking the road in between us, and they had something pacing them. They could hear it walking in the woods with them. They were out on the gravel road, and they could hear this. And one of the gentlemen, he is a big time hunter. He's out in the woods all the time, right? And he actually got a little worried about what was coming, because at one point in time, they thought it was charging them the way it sounded.
Oh.
Now, they didn't ever it was so thick in there, they couldn't get a thermal hit. So they're not sure, what it was. Now, I was with the group that was sitting down on the river, and we kept picking up these whistles, very faint whistles that were coming up the river at us. And we got that. And there's another gentleman that he had this device, and I don't know what to call it. He didn't really have a name for it. I know there is one, but it's so do you remember the movie Crocodile Dundee? And he would go out and stand on the plateau and say he was going to call home.
Yes.
And he was swinging that thing.
Yes.
And the noise it made. Okay. This gentleman had one of those.
Oh.
And he said, okay, I want to try an experiment. I said, all right. So he gave me these headphones that would amplify sound, so you could pick up sound. And he started, and he goes, I want you to watch in this one direction. I said, okay. So he starts doing that. And all of a sudden there's like this, I get this massive deep, hey, like somebody's yelling at me coming from the area that he told me. And there was somebody standing right there with me that didn't have them on. And I jumped, and I'm like, oh my God, did you hear that? And they're like, hear what? And there was 2 green lights when he was doing that coming from the same area. So I don't know what we stirred up.
So, okay. Yeah, that's a good beginning. The green lights, what did they look like? Were they big, small? How
Very
tall
small,
were they?
tiny little green lights about a foot off the ground back in the forested area. Saw them just for a minute, and it was too early. We were down there very early, so there were not like lightning bugs or anything like that. They were just 2 little perfect green lights that were just there for 30 seconds maybe and gone. And that was the same direction that the very loud vocalization came from. But it was only loud to me. Yeah, only loud to me because nobody else could hear it. It was because I had those headphones on. So that was kind of a strange evening out there. And we were noticing too, through part of this, because we were in a large conservation area, and they had been in and trimmed with those big trimmers, along the sides of the road, the arms that get way up. They had trimmed parts of this, but down where we were at, so there were like large limbs. The limbs were at least this big around, that had been pulled out and were laying down there, and they were not part of that, because you could look at that and see where those things have gone through and trimmed, because they just shred the trees. And these limbs, so when we had been there earlier in the day looking, we're like, this is where we're going to come back tonight. We like this area. When we came back the next night, or that night, sorry, these limbs were laying there. And it was like, okay. So we even went back to this area the next day and looked at them again. Those limbs have no damage on them other than where they've been snapped. And anything that would have come in contact with those things, it just shreds them. It pulverizes all of that. And the area where these limbs were laying, that hadn't been through that area and done that. So we found that odd. It was like, it was just odd. The limbs weren't there when we were there in the day. They were there that night. That was just kind of odd. Also, we found a deer leg. I found a deer leg, just, the hoof and the lower part where it starts to bend, the elbow. And it's just laying out in this area by this river access. There's no other bones. There's nothing, right? And I found it odd. So I picked it up and I took it to the hunters in the group. And I said, has this been broken, or has this been cut with a knife? And they're like, well, it's not been cut with a knife. It's, and I said, okay. But they're like, but it's not been like, they're like, it's been snapped. It's a clean snap. And they're like, that's hard to do.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah. So we're kind of like, carrying this deer leg around. And then the next thing that we found in this same area, because you could put into the river right there. So there's river access. And there's about 6 little spots where you can primitive camp in this area. And we're just walking, looking around. And the next thing that we find is a stick shoved straight down into the ground, not far from the deer leg.
It's almost like messages.
It's something.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, okay, that was quite an active area. We were like, and we were kind of, we kind of thought we wanted to go back there, but we were like, no, let's try something else. So Friday night, we went to a different river access area, and part of the group stayed and went. We always split up and try to have different groups. So the people that we went with, we went to another river access area, and part of them were going to actually sit at the put in, and the rest of us were just going to kind of walk the area, because it was an open area, a lot of field, and so we were like, this is a good area to therm, because we can therm into the trees, that kind of stuff. And so as we're kind of walking around making our plans of who's going to go where and who's going to do what, my husband, of all people, and he is the resident skeptic, calls us all over and says, y'all need to come over here and look at something. And I said, okay. Well, he's standing there and he's looking, and it's back up the hollow that we're in, and there's a light. And so we're kind of standing there watching it. And one of the gentlemen, the one that had the little, as he says, call home, he's a ufologist also. And so he's standing there looking, and about that time he starts to get real excited and just starts throwing all kinds of equipment out. And he goes, that's a UAP. We stood there and watched this thing. So it was white, and it was moving just back and forth in a small area. And every so often it would like flip, go straight down, and come back up and start that back and forth, back and forth.
How odd.
And we were like, we videoed it. We stood there. So what we decided to do, Levi was even hitting it with like green laser light. And we're like, because this is not a rabbit hole we've gone down. We're Bigfoot researchers, right? We don't know anything about this.
No, so like, you got a bonus.
Right. We're like, what's the green light do? He goes, well, sometimes it'll cause them to come towards you. And everybody's like, oh no, and I'm like, don't run, don't run. Don't run, don't run. That's prey. You turn into prey as soon as you run.
Yes.
And they're like, well, what do we do? And he's like, just stand. He goes, if it comes towards us, just stand here. Don't go anywhere. Just stand here. The laser light didn't even phase it. It was, I don't know. It almost was like it was mining, right? Because it kept going back and forth in the same area.
How far away do you think it was?
I don't know. So what we finally decided to do was we split into two groups. One group was going to stay and watch it. And me and my husband, my stepson, and another gentleman, we took off to drive to see if we could get closer to it. Mm-hmm. We were exploring all the roads because it was back up the hollow path, up the river. We even ended up all the way back at our camp. And there was just no way to get to it. And so we came back to the people we'd left, and they had tried to walk out to it. And the field got real like marshy. So they were like, no, okay, that's not a good idea. So we messed with this thing for over 2 hours.
And it stayed that long?
Yes. Yes. It was still there when we left and went back to camp. So the next day we go back to this area, and I had two gentlemen who had drones. I said, fly those up there, show me what's up there. Well, there's nothing up there but forest. There's no buildings. There's no outbuildings with pole lights, nothing, right? I mean, they were scanning the whole area. And so basically what we could tell from that was this thing was above the tree line, but not higher than the hills that surround the area. So it's down in the valley doing whatever it was doing. So, we're all just like, we have no clue, because like I said, this isn't our rabbit hole, So we drove around that day too, trying to see if there was some way else to get back up in there. And there just wasn't, short of absolutely just hiking through a pretty thick forest. So we were like, all right, So the next night, that same night, we decided that Levi was going to go back out there and be out there as it got dark. And we were like, okay. He said that way. He goes, I want to see, So he comes back. Well, he got sidetracked. He found a couple of structures on the way, and he had to stop and take pictures and send those. So he gets down there. It gets dark. No light, right? So he came back, and he was kind of disappointed about that. But that evening, it was starting to rain on us. So we went out to our other spots that we were at, and it's raining, and it's not conducive for Bigfoot hunting. Not for us anyway. So we were like, the other truck that we were with, we roll the window down and we're like, hey, you want to go back and see if that light's still there? Because it's, at this point, it's 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. We're like, okay, sure. We're not getting anything here. It's raining type stuff. So we go back. That light is back.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Doing the same thing. Just the back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We sat out there an hour watching it that night. So,
the likelihood of it being a person in the woods with a light trying to, play a prank is nil.
Yeah. because of where they would have to be and the kind of, I don't know. So it was not putting off light, but it was light.
Okay. Yes.
So if you had someone who had a high powered light, it would it would have a beam. This did not have that. And sometimes, you know, it fluctuated, looked like it was slightly fluctuating in size. Sometimes it looked a little bigger and a little brighter and then a little smaller, but it was primarily white. Now, once in a while, when Levi was hitting it with the laser light, it would start to turn reddish orange, and then it would stop.
Oh.
So,
have you ever seen the Joplin spook light?
Yes, ma'am. I have been there and done that.
Was
Not
this
that.
anything like it?
Nope.
No.
No.
Okay.
No, because when I saw the Joplin spook light, you know, it looked like it was 10 or 12 feet off the ground. And I've seen it multiple times, and every time it was a little bit different, right? Because I've seen it split in two, go two different directions. I've seen it bobbing up and down. I've seen it different colors. This thing was primarily white, and it was primarily just moving back and forth. That's why I said, when I watched it, it made me think of something that was mining, because it was back and forth, back and forth. Back. You know, it was almost like it was doing a grid pattern over an area.
Okay. How close was that to 37 degrees latitude?
I would have to go. I would have to look.
That would be interesting. Yeah.
I know that there was some. So the gentleman that was a ufologist, he has friends who said they have sensors out not far from that area, and there was a lot of activity, and that was an area of activity that goes on a lot.
Are you talking about the MADAR units or something similar?
Something similar, I believe. Yes. Yeah. Like I said,
yeah,
I don't know a whole lot about it. You know, I asked him, I said, do we need to report this to anybody? And he goes, I've already done that. And I said, okay, there's not going to be like black SUVs show up at my house, right?
No.
You know, and he was laughing. He goes, I don't know. And I'm like, that's not funny. That's not funny.
No, they're not. They have so many reports. I was going to ask if you reported it to MUFON, because Missouri MUFON. Okay, so I'm going to look into that myself.
Yeah. He did look into that. He did report that. He told me he reported it to them. I didn't. He did.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Did anything else happen on that expedition?
Well, so that night, we were screamed at again, and there was video of eye shine across the road from where we were camping. So it's like, you know, the Bigfoot are definitely in that area, you know, and of course it's along the river. That's, you know, that's just a given, but they seem to be pretty active in that area that we go to. And, you know, we've had the self-illuminating eye glow in that same area. You know, one of my investigators, he was staying in a cabin, and he was speaking with a gentleman who was camping right down on the water's edge. And they were just talking, nothing serious, you know. And the investigator finally asked him, he said, you come here, you know, often? He said, no, but, you know, I've been here a few days, and, you know, just enjoying my peace and quiet. Right. And he kind of asked him something about, well, you ever run into anything strange? And he said, well, you know, last night, he said, I was out here, and he said, if I didn't know better, he said, I think there was monkeys across the river. He said, I was getting this monkey chatter going on.
The chatter.
Right there on the river. Yeah. Yeah. He's like, I'm not sure what it was, you know, and the investigator's like, okay.
Well,
yeah. So.
Yeah, that's squatchy. Sounds squatchy to me.
Yeah, it definitely is. Definitely is.
All right. Well, we're going to take a short couple-minute break, and we'll be back right after these messages.
The Onyx Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes, made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Unnext Network website at unnextnetwork.com. That's unnextnetwork.com. The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unnext Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to research a haunted house can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unnextmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unnextmedia.com or amazon.com. For October the 3rd through the 8th for an experience you won't forget. The conference with top speakers is on Saturday, October the 4th at the Relics Event Center in Springfield, Missouri. And there's special events held on October the 3rd and the 4th through the 8th. There's a limited number of VIP tickets available for the camping and Bigfoot investigation, so get on over to unnextnetwork.com/Ozark Bigfoot. For more information, that's unnextnetwork.com/Ozark Bigfoot.
And we're back with the next news. Hold on just a minute. We've got a
Bigfoot Conference is right around the corner.
A runaway audio there. Wanted to keep going. It wants to go to the conference, Mary Ann. Well, I guess that's a good lead in. Do tell about the upcoming Ozark Mountain Bigfoot Conference.
All right. So October the 3rd, we are having a VIP night. That's something new for us. We did not do that last year. It's going to be held at the Elks Lodge in Ozark. And we will be recording a podcast, and it's going to be a audience included event. We're going to have the people that come to the VIP night. They're going to be able to write questions down, and then our speakers are going to just pull them randomly out and have to answer whatever it is that the people have asked and talk about a little bit. So we're going to be doing that night. We're also going to be having barbecue, serving a dinner that night to them. And that's just where you get just a little more of that one-on-one time with the VIPs, because they will all be there that night. And then Saturday is the day of the conference, and that is at the Relics Event Center. And it starts at 9 in the morning and goes till about 4:30 in the afternoon. And this year we've got RPG is going to be our announcer, emceeing for us, and he's also going to be speaking. We've got Shane Carpenter back. He's my local guy. He's also got Into the 400. He's just got all kinds of good things. And then we've got Wayne from That Bigfoot podcast. He also does the Bigfoot Report. He's going to be back here with us again. David Zagan is new. He is a forensic investigator with the Atlanta Police Department. So he's going to come in and teach us all the cool things about forensic. And then we've got D.A. Roberts. He is a local writer, and he's got his own experiences here. And then we've got Brian King Sharp. Brian is going to be doing some stuff at the campout itself. He's got a book out. He's going to be reading from that. He's also going to be talking about his experiences that he had last year, that he was under an NDA for a year over. So we get to hear all those good things. And So at the end of the day, when our conference is over, we pack people up and we take off and we go camping until Wednesday morning. This is private property that we go out to. We feed you breakfast and dinner. We're going to be doing nighttime hikes, and we've got things like that all planned. David's going to be teaching some more forensic out there, a little more in depth. He's going to go into, pouring those casts, collecting that evidence the correct way, because we're very big about teaching. We feel like if we can educate enough people, somebody eventually is going to get the evidence that the scientific community cannot poo-poo. That's just, if there's enough people out there doing it right, eventually something's going to stick.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds wonderful. Your conference is very unusual and, just given, and also the time and, it's a good time to break away from your normal everyday routine and take a few days off and really get to know something.
Yes.
So are there still VIP tickets available for the expedition?
Yes, there are. We've sold out about half of the camp out tickets. So if somebody's interested in that, they need to go onto Facebook to Ozark Mountain Bigfoot Conference and reach out to me privately, because that's the only place they can get those. Now, if they go to Eventbrite, they can buy like the VIP ticket, which is the VIP dinner and day of conference. They can get a package deal for those two. Or they can just do the VIP night if that's all they can do, or they can do day of conference. But that's all that's available on Eventbrite. What I had to get to go with us, because we limit the amount of people that we take out there, because you can't have that.
You can't have 100 people doing that.
No, because we feed everybody. Everybody's camping. It's primitive. We do have porta potties. We do have running water, but there is no electricity out there. So we kind of have to, limit how many people we take. But every time we've went out and camped, we have had some kind of activity. Something has gone on every time we're out there.
What sorts of things do go on at that site?
Well, so the first time we ever camped out there, the first year that we had it, we had a couple of ladies that were paranormal investigators, not so much Bigfoot, but paranormal. And we'd had a little storm that came through that absolutely destroyed our cook tent. And it was a little while after the storm. Everybody's held their tents down. Everything's safe. Everybody's calmed down and got back into their tents. And one of the girls decided not to get in her tent. She was afraid her cot was wet. So she decided to get in her vehicle, and her vehicle was parked in between her tent and mine and my husband's tent, right? She got woke up. She kept hearing what she said sounded like something tapping on metal. It was like tink, 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 and it kind of woke her up. And she starts to look around, and she can see behind my husband and I's tent, there's a large figure standing behind our tent.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm sound asleep. I mean, I've put a conference on and camped for days. I'm tired and I'm sound asleep. My husband could hear it. He could hear it moving around behind the tent. And so the next morning when we're getting up, there's kind of this buzz in the camp. And so finally, first thing you get up, you run to those porta potties. So after that, I'm like, okay, what's going on? And people all through the camp are talking about hearing something, having something going on around. So I got the guy up as the tracker for me. And I said, look, I want you to check. People are talking about we had something in camp last night. And we laugh about it now. He's like, he thought I was just lost my mind. He wasn't going to find anything, whatever. Well, he found compression tracks because the grass was very tall. And he was able to track this thing all the way around our camping area. It had been around everybody's tent investigating. It had even been around the porta potties,
Boy.
Over. So yeah, that year we ended up in the Bigfoot Times. Daniel Perez was there. And so he documented all of it and put us in the Bigfoot Times that year, because as much as the wealth of knowledge that he is, he's never ever had a sighting like that or been a part of something like that.
Mhm.
And so that was that year. The gentleman that lives out there gets rocks thrown all the time. When they first moved out there was a small house that they were staying in. Now, it didn't have any trees or anything around it. And in the middle of the night, it has a metal roof, and there are rocks being thrown on his roof.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And he's like, there have been eggs stolen off the front porch. His son now lives out there with his wife. And I think it was the first year that we were camping out there. They'd gone to the store and bought 2 of those big flats of eggs, that you have to have hands to carry, almost 2 hands to carry. And the dad had put them on the porch. The son forgot to take them in. Comes out the next morning. One flat is completely gone, and the other flat has not been touched. Now, the one that's gone, there are no destroyed eggs anywhere. So, if raccoons got into it or possums.
It would have been a mess.
Right. There's no mess.
Right.
That flat of eggs ends up in the neighbor's yard up the road 3 days later with one complete row of eggs untouched.
How bizarre.
Right?
That screams Bigfoot to me, because I don't think any other type of animal would have done that.
No, anything else would have ate it right there and made a big mess.
Yeah, and dropped them and broken.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, exactly.
That was a message too, don't you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
Last year when we were out there, so we had taken a group and we had started up this hill. We're about halfway up the hill. The back half of the group, something's growling at them.
Oh.
So we were like, okay. So we got up to the top of the hill. And what we ended up doing after a few minutes, most of the group fell back. Me and another lady, we sat down under a tree as everybody else kind of faded away. And the gentleman, Shane, that tracks for me, he had his thermal going, and he was getting a hit that was somewhere between 5 and 6 feet off the ground, shoulders and head. And he was only catching it for a second as it's moving around us. He was only getting it for split seconds. So there was a smaller one, moving around us in that area. Mm-hmm. So we've also, now this wasn't when we were camping, but Shane was out there one time and they were going to go up the hill, and his partner was sitting with the thermal camera and everything down, waiting for Shane and this other gentleman to get to the top of the hill. And they radioed and said, yeah, we just saw you guys climb up the hill. Are you at the top yet? And he's like, no, you didn't see us do that. He said, we are at the bottom of the hill. We haven't even started climbing yet.
Oh.
So they got bits of them climbing the hill,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And so back in January, we had snow down here in this area. And the landowner was out in his garage, and he has dogs that, they're out in the country, dogs run around, right? And they had the doors open. They were doing something. And there was this howl that sounded like a laughing hyena.
Oh my.
He's heard that a couple of times. So I don't know what to do.
I think that would be very scary.
Well, he said his dogs came back in on that note. So.
Oh, I'll bet they did. We've got a question from chat. Is Mary Ann aware of possible dogman activity, or have you had any?
Well, that's the closest thing we've had. The hyena laugh howl. I mean, I've never heard anybody talk about Bigfoot sounding like that. And any of the Bigfoot stuff that we've ever had, I've never heard them sound like that. So I don't know. I don't know what that was, but I've also heard elk bugle out there in the middle of the night, and there's no elk out there either. I mean, it was a bad imitation of an elk. So Oh, I've lost you. I can't hear you. I think you muted yourself.
Actually, I didn't touch anything.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Somebody doesn't want us to talk about Bigfoot or Dogman.
Right.
But yeah, the area, as far as, well, in checking with Missouri Department of Conservation, there are a lot of elk and wolves have been reintroduced and bear. Have you ever run across a bear?
Okay, that area is bear heavy. It actually has the biggest bear population in the state of Missouri as a county. But when this gentleman first moved out there, the conservation department had you could track them in your area, right?
Oh.
And he said the weirdest thing was they were all around his property, but never on his property.
That's strange.
Right?
So what's keeping the bear away?
Right, because a bear's an apex predator, right? I mean, yeah, there's got to be something bigger than the bear. And as far as the elk are several, they're a long ways away. They should not be close to this area. I mean, they are on, the west eastern part of the state, but they shouldn't be in this area. And it was like in the middle of the night. And what I'm finding out is, there's only I don't know that much about the elk bugling, but this is exactly what it sounded like. But it sounded like it sounded like an imitation. I mean, you knew it was supposed to be a bugling elk, but it just didn't quite sound right, And we all we're all sitting in the middle of in the woods in the dark, and we all, that didn't take long. We went, okay, I think we're gonna get out of here now.
That reminds me of what I was going to ask earlier. Have you heard anything that sounds like it's faking owl sounds?
Yes. And the ones that we've heard, they start out sounding really good, but they can't ever stick the ending. It just all of a sudden just breaks apart at the end. Because if you didn't hear all of it, you're like, wow, okay. Or the other thing about it, it's like, there's a certain tone to that, and you can tell that it's not something huge. And when you hear these other ones, they absolutely sound like it's massive. So, it's odd.
Yeah.
It's odd. There's a slight difference that if you know what to pay attention for, you'll pick it up. Because we've had owls before, like right in the tree above us, right? And you can tell, where it's coming from, and you can tell, okay, that's an owl. These other ones, it's odd. It's like you have a hard time telling where it's coming from, and the running joke is the 800-pound owl in the woods, because you can tell it's something massive making this sound, not your little normal owl.
Yeah, I've heard it and know exactly what it sounds like. And it's not an owl.
No.
What do you think that is? Do you think they're communicating with each other about and saying, hey, there's humans here and watch out, don't be seen, or whatever?
And as funny as this sounds, sometimes I think they're just messing with us. I mean, I think their communication is more of the monkey chatter. I think that's when they're talking to each other, right? I think a lot of this other stuff is, messing with us. Okay, let's see. Do they jump and run when we do this? Do they do that? I think that's what a lot of it is. Because the monkey chatter, you don't hear it, or samurai chatter, whatever you want to call it. It's not as widely heard as, this other stuff is. And I don't think, you hear people talk about the wood knocks. I don't think it's wood knocks. I think it's mouth pops. I think they're able to pop their tongue in such a way. And I think their lung capacity, they're able to make those sounds. Now, I think that might be a form of communication too.
That's the first time I've heard that idea. I think you're onto something.
Well, and I have heard like different investigators talk about hearing two of them doing that back and forth. They could hear it coming from two locations, and they felt like that they were calling to each other so that they could hone in on each other and meet up, because it was right before daylight. And most of the time, when that stuff happens, it's multiple mouth pops. It's not just one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's their way of, hey, I'm here, where are you? Type of deal.
Okay. Yeah.
I really believe that. I believe that's what, what they're doing. It's just, trying to get the family back together, or okay, I'm on this side, you're on that side, that type of stuff.
Do you think that that area that you're investigating, the land where you do the expeditions, do you think that that's a Sasquatch clan in that site?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is, because there's always something going on over there. I mean, and the thing about it is, people want all this major activity, right? Well, if you pay attention, sometimes it's minor things, but it's always going on. Like you find a 25, 35 pound rock sitting on top of a stump. Okay. That's, you either got it, people are doing that, which it's private property, and there shouldn't be anybody else out there. And the landowner's like, I don't do this. We were out there one time and we were finding rocks, and they were completely turned over, so you could see where they had been laying for a long time, right? But it wasn't like a bear. There wasn't scratch marks or anything like it. It was like the rock had been picked up, completely turned over, and then laid aside. And this was done multiple times. We've also found holes dug with sticks, and the stick is still in the hole.
Now, that's not normal behavior for any known animal in our area.
No, it's not. It's not.
Monkeys, maybe.
But, well, exactly. They have been known to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, Shane Carpenter, he's the one that showed me. He has found that on the 400 multiple times. But when he first started finding it, it was always when he was out on his, out hiking by himself. And so he didn't say anything, because he's like, I don't have a witness with me when I find it, right? And so we were actually at this other property. He was with me and my husband and the landowner, and we were out looking at some things, and we walk up on this spot. It's about a 6-inch hole that's, 4 or 5 inches deep, and the stick is still in it. So now it's like we find them periodically. We don't know if they're digging for like worms and grubs, or is it a young one bored digging, just to be doing something while they're sitting watching.
Yeah, like a human child would.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, there's stuff like that goes on. There's odd noises. There's some farm machinery that sits in the field where we camp, and there's nothing loose on it. There's not like dangling pieces or anything like that, right? And you will hear in the middle of the night, it sounds like something is over there with a stick tapping on that.
Oh.
And that happens. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever do gifting, leave gifts out, or apples or things like that?
We have not over there. I am not a fan of leaving the food gifts. If I'm going to leave anything, it's going to be something shiny, sparkly, something like that. Because I think leaving the food can get you in trouble, because if you do it long enough and they become dependent on it, and then you stop, you got some unhappy participants.
Gotcha. I think that's a very good idea. But, I've heard of people leaving little toy soldiers or crystals or things like that, and they'll
Right.
find them taken away, and then the next day they'll find them put back or
Yep.
something in its place.
Yes.
Have you ever been gifted something by possibly
Well,
Sasquatch?
It's funny. I don't know. I find feathers a lot, even when I'm not Bigfooting. And, that makes me stop and go, huh, okay. I mean, it just, and like when we're out walking, I will be the one that finds feathers. So I don't know. I mean, I've heard people talk about they locked their vehicle, and when they came back, there was a feather laying on their dash of their locked vehicle.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to the interdimensional question. Do you think that Bigfoot, Sasquatch could be an interdimensional creature?
Well, I think at this point, you can't rule anything out. I believe they're flesh and blood, and I believe they have abilities that we don't always understand or know. I don't know about the interdimensional thing. I've had some bizarre things happen. I'm not going to poo-poo it. I'm not going to say no. I'm just going to say, I don't know. I just don't know. It would explain things, but my logical brain wants to go, they are the masters of their environment. And, we're not. I like to tell people like this. Okay, so you're in your house all the time. You can walk through your house in the dark. Well, if I come to your house and I'm trying to walk through your house in the dark, I'm going to bump into things. I'm going to make noise. I'm not going to know where everything's at. You can walk through your house silently because you know where everything's at. And that
is a good point. Mm-hmm. You're going into their house when you go out looking.
Exactly.
When you're in the woods.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think they know where all the good hiding spots are. And sometimes it's a matter of they just stop and they freeze and they don't move, and our eyes are trained to catch movement,
True.
And so if they're not moving, we're not going to pick it up.
Do you go out on these expeditions when there's a full moon?
We go out whenever we want. and we're actually, the one we're doing in October is Halloween weekend.
Oh.
A lot of people are like, oh, you shouldn't do that. And it's like, why?
Yeah, really. Why? The Sasquatch don't know it's Halloween.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly. We go out during any moon phase at this point because they're out moving. I had one time someone said, oh, they don't get out and move during the full moon because, they're too easily seen. Bull crap. That's when I had my first Class A sighting, was during a full moon.
Real quick, tell us about your first Class A sighting. We've got 2 minutes.
So we were on an expedition. It was my very first BFRO expedition I ever went on. Didn't have any idea of what to expect. We'd been out quite a while. We were walking down a road. The leader's like, hey, let's get off over here and just sit down, right? And so that's what we did. We sat in a clearing, and they were all started to discuss how many people were sitting. Well, we had 10 people with us, and they're trying to decide where everybody's at. These 3 different gentlemen were. And I was fascinated with the girl sitting next to me because she was completely camoed out, which I thought was kind of funny at the time. But as I sat there and would look away and look back at her, I'm thinking I could walk past her if I didn't know she was sitting there. She blended in so well. And about this point in time, the gentlemen that were discussing how many of us were there jump up and start to move toward the other end of the group. And there was something behind a bush that basically rolled over the berm and ran off. And so at this point, everyone is standing and facing this direction. And these gentlemen are all discussing what they've just seen. Well, my husband and I and this younger girl are standing there, and we can hear what sounds like a large slapping of your thigh. It's the only way I can describe it, like a barehanded slap on skin, but it was substantial. And we kind of look at each other, and I turned around and I took about 3 or 4 steps looking, trying to figure out what is that noise, right? And at that point, this large, upright, hairy figure steps out, and I can see it standing there. Now, I can't see the facial features because guess what? It's a full moon and the face is completely shaded, but I can see it's upright, it's hairy, it's standing on 2 feet. And it stood there, and then it would move over to the other side of the tree and stand there. It wanted to be seen. And I honestly believe that this was Mama, and what we had in our group was a young one. She's trying to distract us from paying attention to where the young one went.
Yeah.
That's just my interpretation of what happened.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
But
that's a good one. Thank you so much, Mary Ann, for spending the evening with us. I appreciate it.
Well,
And good luck with the conference coming up. Of course, Race and I will be there. And so whoever goes, do stop by our booth and say hi. And so we're glad to be a sponsor of that. And I will see you very soon.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. See you all next time.